July 21, 1941, Camp Holabird, Maryland, 6:45 in the morning. A thin mist hangs over the test field. Dew clings to the short grass. In the distance, a small engine rattles to life. It does not roar, it buzzes. Major Robert Hastings stands with a clipboard tucked under his arm. He squints toward the sound. Around him, officers in pressed uniforms murmur quietly. They have tested trucks before. Big ones, solid ones. Machines that look like they belong in war. This one looks different. It rolls into view like an overgrown toy. Flat hood, thin tires, open body. No doors, no roof. A small star painted on the side. The driver, Sergeant Leo Martinez, grips the wheel and bounces slightly as the vehicle crosses uneven ground. The engine hum is sharp and impatient. It feels almost fragile. One colonel clears his throat. That is the quarter-ton truck? Hastings nods. The colonel studies it as if it might collapse at any moment. The little vehicle jerks forward, then climbs a steep dirt mound that stops heavier trucks cold. Its front wheels rise. For a moment, it looks like it will flip backward. Instead, it crawls up, steady and stubborn, and crests the top. Martinez grins. The observers do not. In 1940, the United States Army had issued a call. They wanted a light reconnaissance vehicle. It had to weigh under 2,000 pounds. It had to carry 3 men. It had to survive mud, sand, and broken terrain. It had to be built fast. Many believed such a machine could not exist. Companies scrambled. Designs came and failed. Deadlines tightened. War raged across Europe. The German army had rolled through Poland and France with speed that shocked the world. Blitzkrieg had redefined movement on the battlefield. Now the United States needed speed of its own. The small vehicle before them would soon be known as the Willys MB. But on this morning, it is just an experiment. Martinez turns sharply, sending mud flying behind him. The vehicle pivots tightly, almost playfully. A heavier truck would need space. This one dances. Major Hastings steps closer as Martinez stops in front of him. The engine idles. It sounds busy, almost nervous. 4-wheel drive engaged, sir, Martinez reports. Hastings nods again. He circles the vehicle. He notices how exposed it is. No armor. No protection from rain. A simple windshield that folds down flat. This does not look like something that should survive artillery, machine gun fire, or the weight of war. In Berlin, around the same time, German officers scoff at reports of the American design. Intelligence briefings describe it as light, thin, unsuited for real combat. Compared to armored half-tracks and heavy staff cars, it seems almost laughable. A car for errands, one officer remarks. But war is not only about size. It is about movement. It is about who arrives first, who adapts faster, who can turn chaos into coordination. Back at Camp Holabird, the tests continue. The Willys climbs a 30% grade. It fords a shallow stream. Water splashes over the hood. The engine sputters for a heartbeat, then steadies. Martinez drives through deep sand. The wheels dig in, then grip. The vehicle pulls itself free. One by one, the skeptical faces grow quieter. Hastings feels something shift in the air. Not excitement, not yet. Something more cautious. Recognition. The vehicle is not impressive in the way a tank is impressive. It does not intimidate. It does not thunder. It persists. By late summer, contracts are signed. Production lines begin to move. The Willys MB design becomes the standard. Ford joins the effort to meet demand. Factories hum day and night. Young American soldiers, many barely out of school, begin training with the little machine. They learn how to strip the engine in the field, how to change tires in mud, how to lift it by hand if necessary. Private Harold Dixon, age 19, from Ohio, runs his hand along the flat hood during basic training. It feels like it will shake apart, he says. His instructor smiles faintly. It will not. Dixon does not know that within 2 years he will drive one across North African sand with artillery rumbling in the distance. He does not know that generals will use it as mobile command posts. He does not know that medics will load wounded men onto its narrow frame under fire. Right now, it is just a small vehicle in a big war that has not yet fully reached American shores. December 7, 1941, changes everything. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, production accelerates. The United States is no longer watching the war from across the ocean. It is in it. The little vehicle that once looked like a gamble becomes urgent. Factories push out thousands, then tens of thousands. Crates are packed, ships are loaded. Convoys move east, across the Atlantic, and west across the Pacific. Somewhere in Europe, German officers will soon see the small machine up close, not in a report, not in a photograph, in the dust, in the mud, in the middle of a battlefield. They will not laugh then. November 8, 1942, just before dawn. The coast of French North Africa. The sea is restless. Landing craft slam against waves as American troops approach the beaches near Oran and Algiers during Operation Torch. Engines growl in the darkness. Men grip rifles with wet hands. Among the cargo lashed down inside the larger ships are dozens of Willys MB Jeeps. They sit low and quiet, their canvas covers snapping in the wind. Private Harold Dixon stands beside one in the dim light of the transport deck. He rests his palm on the hood as if calming a nervous horse. He has never been outside the United States before. The air smells of salt and fuel. When the ramps drop hours later, the first jeeps roll into North African sunlight. The heat feels different. It presses down. Sand glitters under a wide sky that seems endless. Dixon starts the engine. It rattles alive. He guides the jeep off the landing craft and onto the beach, tires digging into soft sand. For a brief moment, the wheels spin. Then they catch. Around him, heavier trucks struggle. Some bog down immediately. Soldiers push, curse, strain. The jeep moves. It weaves between obstacles, slipping past stalled vehicles. Its light frame, once considered a weakness, becomes an advantage. It does not sink as deeply. It does not demand wide roads. Lieutenant Charles Benton, a young reconnaissance officer, climbs into the passenger seat. "We move inland," he says. Dixon nods. They drive away from the shoreline, dust rising behind them. The road ahead is barely a road at all. It is a rough track carved by years of local travel. Stones jut up like teeth. The jeep bounces violently, suspension flexing, frame groaning. Dixon expects something to snap. Nothing does. Across North Africa, mobility becomes everything. The desert is vast and unforgiving. Supply lines stretch thin. Units spread out across miles of open terrain. The jeep begins to fill roles no one fully predicted. It carries radio equipment so commanders can speak across shifting front lines. It pulls small artillery pieces. It transports ammunition, food, and water to units cut off from larger convoys. Corporal James Carter, a radio operator, rides in the back with a field set balanced on his knees. The antenna whips above them as the jeep races across flat desert. Static crackles in his headset. "Forward observers requesting coordinates," he shouts over the engine noise. Benton studies a map flapping in the wind. He points ahead. "Tell them we are moving fast. They need to adjust." The jeep accelerates. German units in North Africa, under experienced commanders, rely heavily on armored formations and supply trucks. They expect American forces to move in predictable columns. Instead, small groups of jeeps begin appearing where they are least expected. On one occasion, near the outskirts of Kasserine Pass in February 1943, Dixon and Benton crest a ridge and spot enemy positions forming in a valley below. They are too light to attack. That is not their purpose. Benton grabs binoculars. He studies movement patterns, counts vehicles, marks locations. "Back," he orders quietly. Dixon turns the wheel sharply. The jeep pivots and races down the slope, engine whining but steady. Within minutes, Carter is relaying detailed coordinates. Artillery units miles away adjust their aim based on information delivered by a machine that had once seemed too small for serious war. The desert becomes a proving ground. Sand works into every seam. It coats skin, eyes, lungs. It creeps into engines. Larger vehicles suffer constant breakdowns. Mechanics work without pause. The jeep, simple and accessible, is easier to repair. Soldiers learn to service it quickly, often with basic tools. Its parts are interchangeable. Its design is straightforward. At night, Dixon sits on the hood, staring at a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. The metal beneath him still radiates heat from the day. "You think this thing will hold up in real fighting?" he asks Carter. Carter shrugs. "It already is." There's no glamour in the answer, just truth. German soldiers begin to notice the pattern. Reports mention the small American vehicles that appear suddenly, scout terrain, then vanish before heavier units can respond. Some dismiss them as minor nuisances. Others begin to understand. Mobility shapes the battlefield in subtle ways. Commanders can reposition faster. Wounded soldiers can be evacuated sooner. Supplies arrive before shortages become crises. The jeep does not replace tanks. It does not storm fortified positions. It does something quieter, but just as critical. It connects pieces of the battlefield that would otherwise remain isolated. By the time the North African campaign turns in favor of the Allies in mid-1943, the jeep has earned something more valuable than praise. It has earned trust. Dixon no longer questions whether the frame will shake apart. He knows the sound of the engine when it runs well. He knows the rhythm of its gears. He can feel through the steering wheel when the ground beneath them shifts from firm to unstable. The vehicle that once drew skeptical glances now stands parked beside command tents and artillery batteries as an accepted part of the landscape. Soon, it will face a different kind of terrain. Not endless sand, not open sky, dense hedgerows, narrow European roads, rain-soaked fields. And there, its reputation will grow even larger. June 6, 1944. Just after 7 in the morning. Normandy, France. Low clouds hang over the coastline. Smoke drifts inland from the beaches. The thunder of naval guns still echoes faintly behind the advancing troops. On a crowded stretch of sand near Omaha Beach, a Willys MB Jeep splashes through shallow surf as engineers wave it forward. Its tires climb from wet sand onto firmer ground littered with debris. Private Harold Dixon is older now, thinner. His uniform is stained with salt and mud. He guides the Jeep carefully, weaving around craters and damaged equipment. Lieutenant Charles Benton sits beside him, studying a folded map that has already grown damp from mist and spray. "This is different terrain," Benton says quietly. He does not need to explain. France is not the desert. The land rises and falls in tight folds. Thick hedgerows cut fields into small enclosed boxes. Stone walls line narrow lanes. Visibility shrinks to a few yards in places. The Jeep moves inland with an infantry unit pushing toward the village of Saint-Laurent. Artillery thuds in the distance. Small arms fire cracks sharply, then fades. The little vehicle squeezes down a narrow farm road that would barely fit a larger truck. Branches scrape along its sides. Mud splashes up against the windshield. Dixon downshifts. The engine responds with a steady growl. Ahead, a temporary roadblock of fallen debris blocks the lane. A heavy transport would need time to turn around. The Jeep does not. Dixon reverses, steers into a shallow ditch, and carefully climbs over uneven ground to bypass the obstruction. The frame tilts sharply. For a moment, it feels as if gravity might win. It does not. By mid-morning, Benton receives urgent instructions. A forward platoon has advanced beyond radio range. They need updated orders before pushing deeper into the hedgerows. "Fast as you can," Benton says. Dixon presses the accelerator. The Jeep bounces hard over rutted soil. Carter, now a seasoned radio operator, grips the side frame to steady himself. The antenna flicks against low branches. The hedgerows create a maze. Units become separated easily. Visibility is limited. Coordination becomes fragile. The Jeep becomes a lifeline. Messenger after messenger rides in similar vehicles across Normandy, carrying written orders, maps, and updates between commanders. Radios fail. Lines are cut. But a Jeep can still move. Near a small crossroads outside Colville, Dixon brakes suddenly. A German machine gun has opened fire from a concealed position farther down the lane. Bullets snap through leaves overhead. Benton pulls Dixon down by the shoulder. They reverse quickly, tires spinning in wet earth. The Jeep was never designed to absorb heavy fire. It is exposed, vulnerable, and yet its speed saves them. They retreat to cover behind a stone wall. Benton studies the terrain. Within minutes, artillery units adjust based on their report. The hidden position falls silent. Later that evening, Dixon drives again, this time with 2 wounded soldiers lying across the rear. A medic rides with them, pressing bandages firmly in place. The road is uneven. Every bump risks more pain. Dixon drives as smoothly as he can, navigating between shell holes and fallen branches. The hospital station is several miles away. Larger ambulances are scarce. The Jeep bridges the gap. By late summer, Allied forces push deeper into France. The pace of movement becomes critical. Patton Third Army drives east with remarkable speed. Roads clog with tanks, trucks, and marching infantry. Yet it is often the small Jeep that scouts ahead, identifies blocked routes, and redirects entire columns. Sergeant Leo Martinez, now serving with a reconnaissance unit near Chartres, France, leans against his Jeep one evening and studies captured equipment nearby. A German officer has commented earlier that the American vehicle seems to be everywhere. Martinez smiles at the thought. In towns newly liberated, French civilians gather around the passing Jeeps. Children wave. Some reach out to touch the flat hood marked with a white star. The vehicle does not look like an instrument of intimidation. It looks accessible, human. Inside headquarters tents, maps are spread across folding tables. Generals lean over them, stepping outside occasionally to climb into waiting Jeeps that carry them between forward positions. The machine that once seemed too small for major combat roles now serves as a mobile office, courier service, ambulance, and scout platform all at once. German forces begin to adapt. They recognize that these light vehicles extend American reach. They attempt ambushes along narrow roads, aiming to disrupt communication. Still, the Jeeps keep moving. Rain falls steadily in the autumn of 1944. Roads turn slick, mud thickens, heavy vehicles struggle in places. The Jeep, lighter and more agile, finds paths along field edges and through shallow ditches. Dixon notices how naturally he now trusts the steering wheel in his hands. The vibration through the frame feels familiar, almost reassuring. He no longer sees it as a fragile experiment. He sees it as a partner. But Europe will test more than mud and narrow roads. Winter is coming. And with it, one of the harshest battles of the war. The small vehicle will face snow, ice, and a sudden counterattack that shakes the Allied lines. December 16, 1944, 5:30 in the morning. Ardennes Forest, Belgium. The cold arrives before the sound. It creeps through boots, through gloves, through layers of wool. Frost clings to tree branches. Snow covers the narrow roads in a thin, deceptive layer that hides ice beneath. Private Harold Dixon wakes to the distant rumble of artillery. It is not friendly fire. It rolls from the east, sudden and overwhelming. The German counteroffensive has begun. Within hours, units across the Ardennes are cut off. Communication lines fail. Confusion spreads faster than the news itself. Dixon rushes to his Jeep, breath fogging in the air. He brushes snow from the hood with stiff fingers. The metal is so cold it burns his skin. Lieutenant Charles Benton appears beside him, face pale but focused. "We move now," Benton says. Command needs confirmation from the forward companies. The engine hesitates when Dixon turns the ignition. For a second, there's only a weak grind. Then it catches. The sound is sharper in the cold, metallic, determined. They roll onto a forest road barely visible beneath snow. Pine trees crowd both sides. The sky's gray and low. Visibility shrinks to a narrow tunnel ahead. Carter adjusts the radio, static filling his headset. Signals are broken. Units report armored columns pushing through unexpected sectors. The Jeep slides slightly on ice. Dixon corrects gently, hands steady on the wheel. The forest is not open desert. It is not hedgerow country. It is tight, shadowed, unpredictable. Ahead, they pass a stalled supply truck stuck in a drift. Soldiers struggle to push it free. The Jeep does not stop. It veers off the main track, cutting through a shallow clearing between trees. Snow sprays behind them. Its light weight works in its favor again. It rides on top of softer drifts where heavier vehicles sink. By mid-morning, they reach a forward position near Bastogne. Infantry dig shallow foxholes in frozen ground. The air is filled with tension more than noise. Everyone senses that something large is unfolding. Benton gathers reports quickly. German forces are advancing with armor and infantry, exploiting weakly held sectors. Roads are blocked. Some units are surrounded. He turns to Dixon. We take this back, now. The return journey is more dangerous. German patrols probe side roads. Artillery lands unpredictably. At one bend, Dixon brakes hard. A fallen tree blocks the path. Snow dust floats in the air from a recent blast. There is no time to clear it. He shifts into reverse, backs down the narrow road, then turns sharply into a barely visible logging trail. Branches scrape the sides. The Jeep tilts over uneven ground. Carter grips the frame. If we roll, that is it. Dixon does not answer. His focus narrows to the path ahead. The Jeep crawls over a small embankment, slides slightly, then regains traction. The four-wheel drive system pulls steadily, slow, controlled. They emerge onto another road beyond the blockage. Hours later, the information they carry helps reposition artillery and reinforce vulnerable points. Coordination remains fragile, but it holds. Throughout the Battle of the Bulge, Jeeps crisscross the frozen landscape. They deliver ammunition to isolated units. They evacuate wounded when larger ambulances cannot reach narrow forest roads. They tow small anti-tank guns into hastily prepared defensive lines. Sergeant Leo Martinez, now attached to a different division near Hufales, watches snow collect on his windshield as he waits for orders. He thinks briefly of Maryland, of that misty test field years ago. No one had imagined this. The Jeep idles quietly beside him, exhaust rising like breath into the cold air. German forces attempt to exploit speed and surprise. Yet the Allied response relies heavily on small, fast connections between units. Messages move, supplies move, commanders move. The Jeep becomes part of the nervous system of the army. It is not armored. It does not carry heavy weapons. It does not dominate the skyline. It endures. By late January 1945, the German advance has stalled. The bulge in the Allied lines is slowly pressed back. Snow begins to melt. Mud returns. Dixon parks his Jeep at the edge of a clearing and steps out, stretching stiff legs. The forest is quieter now, not peaceful, just less chaotic. He looks at the vehicle. Scratches line its sides. Paint is chipped. The canvas top is worn thin. It has crossed desert heat, French mud, and Belgian snow. And the war is not finished. Across the ocean, on islands scattered through the Pacific, other Jeeps are fighting a different kind of terrain. Jungle, coral, steep volcanic slopes. The small machine that Germany once dismissed is about to prove itself again in a world far from European forests. February 19, 1945. Iwo Jima. 8:10 in the morning. The beach is black. Volcanic sand swallows boots and tires alike. The air smells of smoke and salt. Offshore, naval guns boom in slow, heavy rhythm. Each blast rolls across the island like distant thunder. A Willys MB Jeep lurches down the ramp of a landing craft and sinks halfway into the dark sand. Corporal James Carter jumps out first, boots plunging deep. He waves to the driver, a Marine named Thomas Green. Keep steady. Do not spin too fast. Green eases the throttle. The engine whines. The rear wheels dig in, then the front wheels bite. The Jeep shudders forward inch by inch until it reaches firmer ground beyond the waterline. Behind them, larger trucks struggle badly. Some require tractors to pull them free. Time stretches thin under enemy fire. The Jeep keeps moving. On Iwo Jima, terrain is unforgiving. The island is small, but it rises sharply. Ash and loose rock shift under weight. There are no wide roads, only rough tracks carved by shell fire and hurried engineering. The Jeep becomes a runner again. It carries officers between beachheads and forward slopes of Mount Suribachi. It hauls ammunition boxes to Marines pinned down by defensive fire. It transports wounded men from exposed ridgelines back to aid stations closer to shore. Green grips the steering wheel as the Jeep climbs a narrow incline cut into volcanic rock. The engine strains, but does not fail. Sweat mixes with ash on his face. Beside him, Carter adjusts a radio set mounted hastily in the rear. Static bursts between short, urgent messages. Air support adjusting approach, Carter says, listening closely. They need confirmation of position markers. Green nods and presses forward. The Jeep stops near a cluster of Marines crouched behind low cover. An officer leans in, speaks quickly, points toward a ridge. Within minutes, coordinates move from that small open vehicle to aircraft overhead. The Jeep does not fire a shot. It does not claim a position. It links action to action. Weeks later, on Okinawa, rain turns coral roads into slick channels. Mud cakes the undercarriage. Yet the Jeeps continue to operate, often modified in small ways by the men who depend on them. Some mount light machine guns on reinforced brackets. Others attach extra fuel cans for longer runs between scattered units. In the Pacific, distance is measured differently, not in miles across open land, but in isolated pockets of resistance separated by jungle and ridges. Lieutenant Charles Benton, now reassigned to a logistics role in the Pacific Theater, steps into a Jeep outside a makeshift headquarters tent. He runs a hand across the familiar flat hood. Years earlier, he had doubted it. Now he trusts it without question. He watches as a convoy of Jeeps departs along a narrow jungle track, weaving between palm trees. They move quickly, lightly, almost quietly compared to larger machines. Across 3 continents, the pattern has repeated. In North Africa, the Jeep proved it could outrun sand. In Europe, it threaded through hedgerows and frozen forests. In the Pacific, it climbed volcanic slopes and navigated coral mud. German officers who once dismissed it as too small had underestimated a simple truth. War rewards flexibility as much as force. By the spring of 1945, more than 500,000 Jeeps have been produced. They are not rare. They are everywhere. They sit beside field hospitals, engines ticking as medics unload stretchers. They idle outside command posts, ready to carry urgent orders. They park in muddy farmyards in France and on dusty airstrips in the Philippines. Private Harold Dixon stands beside his Jeep in a small German town in April 1945. The war in Europe is nearing its end. Buildings are scarred, streets are quiet. He rests both hands on the hood and looks at his reflection in the windshield. He is not the 19-year-old who once doubted whether the vehicle would hold together. He has crossed oceans and continents behind its wheel. The Jeep does not look triumphant. It looks worn, scratched, honest. That may be why it endured. It never tried to be more than it was. It did not need heavy armor or towering guns. It offered movement when movement was scarce. It offered connection when units were scattered. It offered speed when time meant survival. When soldiers returned home after the war, many carried memories of that small vehicle with them. Some would later buy civilian versions built from the same wartime design. The shape remained familiar. The purpose shifted from war to work and travel, but its legacy had already been written across deserts, forests, beaches, and mountains. Germany had laughed at the Jeep in the beginning. By the end of the war, no serious commander dismissed it. Because sometimes the machine that changes history does not arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives with a steady engine hum, forward-driven wheels, and the stubborn refusal to stop.